I want you to imagine the amount of opportunity you would have had you been part of the internet before it went mainstream. Yeah, there was endless opportunity, right? There was so much new demand and you basically had zero competition. But here's the crazy part. Right now you have a similar opportunity, but with artificial intelligence. You see, all of these companies, right, and there are millions, they are all going to have to integrate artificial intelligence, and they know that because if they don't, well, then they're going to fall behind. And so it's your job to figure out exactly what they want and then fill in that demand. The problem is, in the online business industry, we see a million different businesses a week. And so the question remains, which of these businesses are actually worth pursuing and which of them actually fill a gap within the demand? Now in this video, that is exactly what we're gonna find out, because I'm gonna rank 10 AI business models, and we're gonna do so using a tier list that goes from D to S tier. And so if you're a person out there that has been looking for an artificial intelligence business to start, well then again, this video is exactly what you need. So let's start off this video by having a look at the actual tier list. Again, we have 10 businesses down here. Okay, some of them are mainstream, they're very popular, and others are not. So again, D being the absolute worst tier and S being the absolute best. So let's just kick it off with the first business model, which is customer support agents. Now, if I had to do this business myself, I would target fintech companies. I would target exchanges, brokerage firms, e-commerce businesses, SaaS businesses. These are the businesses that I would target. And what this basically means is that you try and replace their entire support team. So any established company that has to do with customers, they typically have a support team, and their job is ensuring that everything runs smoothly for the customers. They likely get hundreds of emails and hundreds of calls a day. So they have multiple employees handling all of that. Now those employees, right, they need a salary, right? And they also need office space, and they also need training. And so your job is essentially to replace their entire team. And the reason why a business model like this might actually work and why a service like this can actually be easier to sell is because you are not asking a company to add an additional expense. In fact, you're doing the opposite, right? You might even cut their expenses in half, right? Or by 30% or however much they're paying their support team. And so you tell the company, right? How much are you paying your current support team? Okay, we can cut that in half, or we can reduce it by 30%. We have, established and well-trained AI agents that will send you reports, summaries, recordings, and everything else that you need on a weekly basis. And so for the company, they save time because they don't have to train their employees, right? They save office space if they have an office, and they save money because they no longer have to pay their salary. And so based on all of that, I would rank this as an A tier business. Okay, now why do I put it in A tier? Well, first of all, I've seen a lot of people do this business, and so we know there's competition, right? But that can also be a good thing because that means there's also demand. My problem with this service is that this is not super difficult, which means there's a high chance that someone on their team can actually do this already. Now, again, this is my personal opinion. I would rank this, an A-tier business. Could I do it myself? Probably. Would I? Probably not. But this next one we're about to talk about is something I have not seen a lot of in the industry. Okay, and so if you compare it to something like customer support agent, well, then it's basically unheard of. Now that can either be good or it can be bad. And what I'm talking about here is outbound sales systems. So when you run a company, right, especially if you run a service-based company or you sell an info product or whatever it is that you do, well, then you typically hire appointment setters. And so let's say you run a high-ticket coaching offer. What you would typically do is hire appointment setters, and their entire job is to find leads, send them personalized messages, ensure that they constantly follow up with these leads. And they do all of that in hopes of booking a sales call, and then the company or person will pay that appointment setter based on how many calls he can actually book. Now, if you can create a system that does this for them, well, then I believe you can make a load of money. And so the idea here is that you build a system that essentially gets them leads, right? Sends them personalized messages, right? Ensures that it actually follows up with the leads and that it converts well, right? And so what you do and what I would do is, first of all, I would build the system. Then I would, test it myself. I would get the actual conversion rate, and then I would use that conversion rate to convert customers. Then I would start reaching out to all of these influencers and online business gurus that all have some sort of info product. Then I will tell them, hey man, how much are you paying your setters? Well, I can reduce that by, 30 or 50%. And there's a high chance that, my system has a way higher conversion rate. And so again, similar as before, the beautiful part about artificial intelligence is that you can typically save a business money and time. And those are two very valuable assets to a business owner. And so outbound sales systems, if you can actually create this and get a decent conversion rate, well, then I would without a doubt put this right in the A tier, or sorry, S tier. Now, the reason why I put it in the S tier is because there's so much demand. Like, you guys just have no idea how many people out there are actually running high ticket offers, right? Or coaching based offers, info products, all of this. And they all have appointment setters. You can replace all of that if you can build the right system, right? And so you can pocket the difference. You can pocket the commission. And now you can apply that system to tens of or 20 or 30 different businesses. You can quite literally turn this into an AI empire that just continues to generate you commission. But again, the bottleneck here is actually creating a system with a high enough conversion rate to the point where it beats their existing appointment setters. Now, in my opinion, this next one is a hidden gem, okay? Just because it targets an expanding industry, not a contracting one. What I'm talking about here is content. Okay, so it's becoming increasingly popular to become an influencer, a content creator. And I would say about 80% of modern day businesses are entirely dependent on their content, right? That is quite literally their source of revenue. It is their funnel, it is their engine. Without their content, their business doesn't work. And so this is the number one priority for so many business owners. Now, what you can do is create a content distribution system. And so you can, for example, find a company that A, doesn't do content, or B, doesn't distribute it well enough. For example, a lot of people sit at home thinking that, oh, I'm posting twice a day. That's more than enough. They have an entire business. They post twice a day and they think that's it, right? Because they don't see a way to post more than twice per day. But you can now contact these people, right? And you can ask them, okay, how much of your traffic actually comes from your content? And then once you have that number, well, then you can, basically figure out how important content actually is for their business. And so let's say 75% of their traffic is from short form content or long form content, but they're only posting twice a day. You can essentially tell them that you can increase sales by God knows how much, because if they're only posting twice a day and your content system can, make them go from 2 posts a day to 65 posts a day, well, then inevitably you will bring so much revenue to the table. I have also created a system. I just haven't monetized it. Personal use, that essentially allows that person to go from 4 posts a day to 65 posts a day just using that system. And so what you do is you create a system that essentially distributes content out to 30 different accounts on, 6 different platforms. And so you have Twitter, right? You have LinkedIn, you have YouTube long form, YouTube short form, Instagram Reels, TikTok, and I mean, the list goes on here. But most people are stuck on just 2. Now, if your system can distribute that content out to those 6 alone, well, then again, you're pretty much going to 4x their content output. And if you now add all of the extra accounts on top of it, well, then again, you can 10x, 20x, or even 30x their content output, which again will inevitably lead to more sales, as that is, for most people, the entire engine of their business. And so this, I would actually categorize as an S tier if you know how to market it and if you know how to build the actual system. 80% of modern day businesses are quite literally built around content. And so if you can ensure that they distribute way more, well, then it is a win-win situation for the actual business. Now, this next one is probably one of the more popular business models within the online business industry. And that is internal ops automation, okay, SMBs. And so what this essentially means is that you go ahead and automate all of the boring tasks within a company. So that could, for example, be reading an email, responding to an email, responding to comments, update a spreadsheet, notify the right team member, right? That is essentially what we're trying to do here. Now, the problem with this is the fact that there's already so many existing softwares out there that does this for companies like Zapier, for example. There's also an immense amount of competition, right? Because this was one of the first business models that people tried to pursue after mastering artificial intelligence. And so this I would never do myself. I'm going to put it in the C tier. I'm sure it works for some people, but again, most companies, they already do this themselves. They use an existing application or they have someone on their team that can actually do this for them, because at the end of the day, it's not very difficult. Research assistant for finance companies and or creators. Now, this one is one of the worst ones in my opinion. I mean, research is just probably the easiest thing that you could ever do with artificial intelligence. Everyone understands how to create and conduct proper research with AI if they have any sort of experience, which in most established companies, you're going to have people that understand AI well enough to create and structure research reports. And so this, I don't see working. I would never pay for it myself. I don't know anyone that would actually pay for this. So I'm going to put it straight in the D tier. Now, this next one is pretty smart. Okay, so this is a lead qualification chatbot, and it's essentially something that pretty much any website that sells an actual product is going to want. So have you ever been on a website where suddenly a small chat window pops up of an AI that asks you, what are you looking for? How can I help you? You can explain the product and I can try and find it. It's essentially a way for a company to gather data, right? So let's say that you run a company that sells software to agencies, right? And somebody visits your website. Well, then that chatbot is now going to ask them, how many people are on your team? Are you looking to switch softwares, this quarter? What was the problem with your previous software? What is your, but all these things, right? It essentially collects data for the actual website. And it also filters serious buyers from just random visitors, right? And so it is, in my opinion, an essential for any established firm or company that has an actual website where, sales come through. Now, the problem is, as you guys have probably seen on websites yourself, most people already have this, right? So you could either try and pitch an improved version. And of course, in order to do that properly, well, then you would need results. And so the best outcome here is that you already have the actual data before you start selling it. You do it for your own business, perhaps. But I see the potential. I'm going to put this in the B tier just because I believe most people already have this. And I do believe that the competition is quite aggressive. But again, what people don't understand here is that even though an industry is saturated, right? I've never used saturation as an excuse because if your product is better, well, then you're going to be able to sell it, right? And so if you create a chatbot that just outshines what they already have by 5x, well, then there's essentially no way that company is not going to go with you over what they currently have because again, that's likely going to lead to more sales. And there's not a company on earth which is not interested in that. So again, you can make anything work. Saturation is never an actual excuse. Okay, next one, add creative testing systems. Now, this is essentially a tool or a system that allows companies to test, build, organize, and improve faster. It is not a magic tool that will immediately allow people to run profitable ads. I mean, nobody knows if an ad is truly going to be profitable before you actually look at the analytics of that very ad. But it typically does three things. One of those being generating ad angles. So a huge problem for a lot of people is a lack of creativity, right? Or they don't know how to analyze their competition. And so what your tool does is that it analyzes competition within their niche. It identifies outlier ads, right? And then it essentially replicates that and reverse engineers it according to his offer. And by doing that, you are working with a proven to work format, right? And that just increases the overall survivability and profitability of that ad by a lot. Ads is, again, something that can literally make or break a business. So this is something very important. And if you actually know how to generate results through your own system, well, then again, there's basically no money that you cannot make because everyone is willing to pay for it. So because of that, I'm going to put this in the A tier. I like it. And if you can actually create a system that has proven results, well, then again, I don't think you'll have an actual problem selling this. This next one, video repurposing service, where you essentially take a long form video from a creator and you chop it up into a bunch of different small pieces that they can then use for their short form content. Therefore, because of you, they can now increase their content output, which is indirectly going to impact sales and revenue. But because there are so many, softwares out there that actually do this automatically already, I'm going to put this straight in the D tier. It is not something I would do myself, and it's not something that I see a lot of demand for. Next is a newsletter/report generation service. So you essentially create a tool that will automatically create reports and or newsletters. Now, again, this is something that's so easy to create with AI, right? Pretty much anyone with minor experience can actually do this. There are already so many softwares out there that has filled the gap. And so for that reason, I'm going to put this into the D tier as well. Software as a service, so SaaS, right? Which is also something that's becoming increasingly popular with Codex and Claude Code being released. Previously, SaaS was great, right? Because it allowed you to build something other people couldn't because it had such a high startup cost. It also, generally speaking, was a business with a great exit, meaning you could sell your software, and if it was a software that people wanted, well, then you could sell it for a lot, therefore exiting properly, right? And that's a massive problem within modern day businesses. They just can't be sold because a lot of them are built around personal brands. And so when you have an actual SaaS product, well, then you can sell that and use that as your exit. But nowadays, this is becoming so saturated. And we have all of these vibe coders out here that quite literally think they can build the next Bloomberg terminal from just using Claude Code. And that's just not the case. And so for 99% of people nowadays, right, that use Claude Code and Codex and have absolutely zero coding experience, I would put this in the D tier. I don't see it working. And so SaaS is, in my opinion, good for a lot of people when it runs an actual process. Workflow SaaS is great, right? And that's things like an outbound sales system or a content distribution system, essentially a software that allows a company to run a process better. If you can do that and you can fill that demand, like the two that I've placed in the S tier, well, then again, I think it's great. The problem is platform based SaaS, like a trading journal app, aggregated analytics, a new Bloomberg terminal, all of these things, I do not think is a great idea for 99% of people. We also have a lot of people now trying to create iOS apps, right? So actual phone games and applications that go directly on the App Store. I would never do it myself. I'm not a coder. If you are a coder, go for it. If you're not, I would highly advise against it. Last one being high ticket AI info product and more specifically B2B. Now you can also do this B2C, but I would prefer to do this B2B for one specific reason. So every company on earth is looking to optimize towards artificial intelligence, just like they did in the early 2000s with the internet. The people that didn't, well, they got left behind. And so they now view this as that exact same scenario. And so if you now have social proof that you understand AI, you know how to implement systems, and you know how to teach people how to use it to their advantage, well, then again, I think you can sell this for a lot. And when I say high ticket offer, I mean above $5,000. And again, depending on the size of the company, you can increase or decrease the actual price of the offer. So again, your job is to create either a training program or a video course that essentially teaches companies how to correctly implement this and how to actively improve upon their artificial intelligence learning. So if you can successfully do this, you can market it properly, you have the social proof, well, then I think you can make a load of money doing this. So I'm going to put this in the S tier, but only for a certain amount of people. Again, this, in my opinion, requires social proof. And so what I mean by that is previous clients that say, oh, this was amazing. This did X, Y, and Z. You have testimonials. Perhaps you have a personal brand. You then run ads on it and you target large corporations. Well, then again, I think you can make a load of money. And right here is the finished tier list. So in the D tier, we have research assistant, video repurposing service, newsletter/report generation service. And we have SaaS. Again, SaaS, it could also be S tier depending on how you look at it. But C, we have internal ops automation. On B, we have lead qualification chatbot. A, we have customer support agent and ad creative testing systems. And in the S tier, we have outbound sales systems, content distribution system, and high ticket AI info product B2B. That was my tier list, right? Again, my personal opinion. I have experience with some of them I don't. But generally speaking, if you're looking to start a business, in my opinion, it is not a bad idea to follow a list exactly like this one to ensure that you're not wasting your time. Now, am I saying that all the business models I placed in D are just impossible to monetize? No, absolutely not. But in my opinion, the better idea for the majority of people is to start with a business model that is either B, A, or S tier. So again, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this helped you out. If you're a person out there looking to start a business based on artificial intelligence, and no matter what you do, right, even if you start a business in the D tier, the experience you gather from that and the data you collect will always help you within your next endeavor. So it is never a waste of time. But of course, there are certain areas that are better to go than others. And so this was my view on the best artificial intelligence businesses. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate every single one of you. Now, if you want access to all of our software, all of the guides we've ever created, well, then make sure you check out the link down below. I appreciate you watching this video. If you enjoyed it, like it, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in our next video.